Merry Christmas.
I wish the soldier had like a response. All I can do is give you like this evil glare in return. All right, today we are talking Merry Christmas by Osamu Dazai, which, let me pause here. Have you ever read any of his novels or anything like that before, Krypto?
First time ever. Blown away. Excited for you to add something on the docket.
Okay, because here's two things for you. One, his novel, No Longer Human, brilliant, one of the best books I've ever read, so perhaps I should make you read that.
Ooh. High
But
praise.
They're releasing like a prequel to that novel that he wrote that was just never translated into English here in March. So maybe I need to get going on that. But you have read his daughter, Yuko Tsushima. Like, so if you didn't know, they're related.
Oh, I did not know that. I'm learning all kinds of cool things today. Neat.
So this is a story that, so for those that haven't read Dazai, and feel free to chip in the comments below your feedback on Dazai, but it just permeates this dread, this gloom. Like even like happy moments like Christmas have like this bah humbug kind of like film over it. That's not the greatest way to describe it, but the opening sentence is just very Dazai. Like Tokyo presented a picture of effervescent gloom. Like that's perfect way like the Dazai writes.
Yeah, what you said, you're right. You didn't describe it well at all. But that sentence, let's leave it up to him because it was perfect. I'm just like, oh, I know what I'm getting into for the next few pages. I know exactly how this story is going to go. Brilliant opening line.
Yeah, he's got a lot of themes of like alienation, of westernization, a lot like your boy Yukio Mishima, and even kind of like a little bit of like the forms of happiness or forms of communication, if you will. So let's get into this one today. So our narrator finds that he's returning to Tokyo and nothing has changed, though he's been gone for 1 year and 3 months. And that's kind of the story, the structure of this story. And I think it's kind of true for life too, right? Like we can all get caught up in the hustle and bustle of the city, like thinking things are so important, only to realize that like, did they really change much? Like really? Like.
So when I was reading this, I tried to think of myself of when I've moved places and then gone back and I think, wow, this place really hasn't changed a lot. And I kept thinking, is that me kind of feeling like bah humbug? Like, I guess I didn't make a difference or I don't matter. Or, yeah, this place, like, it didn't change because I wasn't here. And so I guess I thought of a lot of introspection of what does it mean? What is he trying to prove or disprove by saying that the city just still seems to hold that same presence for him?
I think we have to use the word essence in this discussion, right? He has a quote.
The essence of Tokyo.
He speaks better than I do, obviously. There are physical differences, of course, but on the metaphysical level, the place is as always. We've talked before about you can show someone 1,000, the old Bertrand Russell description of you can show someone 1,000 pictures of a street and they can see every angle of it and they can understand it intellectually. But until you walk that street, until you experience the actual essence of it as opposed to intellectually understanding something, only then do you really have like that special connection with something. So even though Tokyo, even though the city, even places can either change or not change, we can still agree it's that place. Like the essence of Tokyo is still Tokyo in a sense. Even if the shops change, even if we add new streets, it's still the Big Mikan.
Yeah, I think that's important to point out though, because a lot of people, when they're thinking about change, they think about progress in how many buildings there are, or is this road now 4 lanes wide and it was 2 lanes wide when I was here a child because you went back to your childhood home or something. But if you really get down to the nitty-gritty essence of a place, does that feel different and changed? And I think that if you take a hard, long look, it doesn't. And what does that mean? How does that feeling change your perception?
Well, let's contextualize this too with what's happening in Japan, right? Do you remember what the narrator, he specifically called it out, was wearing?
It's his uniform, right?
It was just a plain kimono. So traditional, Japanese garb, if you will. And do you remember what movie he went to go see?
Oh, I don't.
It was, well, I kind of phrased that poorly, as usual. But it was an American movie, was the point, right? So you'll see a lot of writers at this time have this discussion of East versus West, right? We've talked about the Meiji era, where they went through a very drastic change in how they produce product and how they move forward as a country. What does it mean to be Japan when we take on all these Western ideals or these Western practices, in a sense? And I think there's a little bit of an Eastern versus Western conversation here, because if you didn't know, much like your boy Mishima, he was a kind of like a big imperialist, yeah, well, I'll leave it there, but he definitely was kind of into the traditional Japanese way of life, if you will.
So when we think about this story, I mean, this is published post-World War II. There has to be some influence on that, of that East versus West, if this is, just a couple of years after the West has been fighting in this part of the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, think about the ending, right? Remember, he says, "Merry Christmas" to the soldier. And the soldier just gives him this look and he does it like the American way too, like the Merry Christmas, like that's like the Japanese.
Yes.
It's the Japanese kind of pronunciation of it. It's funny, but it's also humorous, but it's also gloomy, right? Like the Dazai writing style. But again, it's kind of like that westernization coming into the country, and him almost kind of absorbing that Christianity, like that Christmas spirit. Not that it didn't exist before, but it's being pushed upon them, right? And there's this rejection of it, this alienation of it from the country, because has much changed. Japan is still Japan. Tokyo is still Tokyo, in a sense.
Oh yeah, that feels like it makes a lot more sense when you take that context into it, of that he's saying, well, the West may come in and try to force their values or their religion, or they may try to, they may beat us down in the war, but we're still going to be us. Our essence is still going to be Japan. And I think that is very important to know and understand when trying to read a story like this.
I think when our narrator comes into town, he goes to the store, he meets his chickadee. We have wonderful quotes like, "To meet up with a woman you once pursued but no longer feel any affection for is the worst of misfortunes. And in my case, most of the ladies I know fit that bill."
This story, for being kind of gloomy and depressing, was hilarious. And then he starts and he goes off and ticks off the ways of why this lady was like, yeah, she sucked for these reasons and we never hooked up because of X, Y, and Z. It was very comical.
Well, and then he gives you this almost over intellectualized list. I liked her for 4 reasons. Number 1, she's clean. Number 2, she likes me. and then number 4 was she's got lots of alcohol at her apartment. Nothing to do with her. Just the fact that she has alcohol at her apartment, which
that he can drink for free.
Well, and again, critics will point out that in terms of this I-novel about how authors inject themselves, particularly Japanese authors at this point in time in history, injected themselves into the writing. You got to bring up the fact that Dazai was known to be a little bit of an indulger into alcohol, right? He was known to feel disconnected from humanity. Like when we look at this narrator, do you feel that there's an alienation between him and others, between him and women? How do you describe this narrator's connection with this world?
Oh, I think that he's pompous. I think that he thinks he's better than everybody else. He's strolling into town. He's like, yeah, it's the same old place. And then, maybe he's an alcoholic, but I feel like he's trying, maybe not necessarily he just is an alcoholic wanting to get drunk, but he sees it as, I can just get free booze. So I'm just going to take advantage of that. And he constantly goes back to that, that he's trying to almost pull one over on people or see how much he can get away with.
It's kind of like he's very, I think, did you say the word self-interested? I want to dance between self-interested isolationism, which...
Yeah, that's fair.
When we look at how Japan, I don't think he's meant to be an allegory for Japan's past, but when you do look at how, Japan used to be a lot more closed borders in terms of what they allowed in terms of influence.
Conservative, sure.
And that's part of the East-West conversation here too. This man is one that is trying to avoid, I think, some of that connection with others even. It's kind of as soon as he starts to feel seen, he goes back into a turtle. He's a turtle. I'm saying he's a turtle. Because remember,
that's a good analogy.
As soon as he started to feel embarrassed about something, oh, I can't show a girl that I don't know everything. That's super unsexy. He immediately tried to hide who he was.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting character of how he interacts with the world because he's so concerned about how the world is going to see him, even though he doesn't seem to care either at the same time. He's kind of a conundrum, right? I mean, or he's a walking oxymoron.
And I don't know, maybe I'm selling the idea short, like take literature how you want. But maybe you can make a little bit argument of the old Japan, new Japan too, because one, you got to look to your past if you're going to preserve values, right? If you're going to preserve the past. And here we've lost it, right? The mom is no longer with the female anymore, right? Like she passed away in the Western War, if you will, in a sense, right? Because remember, they described it as the war with the Americans and the British. And then when they're trying to have her favorite foods, honoring the past in terms of this old, new, east, west conversation that's happening, remember they said he had the old Tokyo values, right? Like there is something to be said about what you see and take from the past and what you are and what you represent for the future, right? And that's what, it's interesting that this man that's selling them the boiled eel, which again, broiled eel, just disgusting to me.
Sounds disgusting.
It's awful.
I bet it is.
I had to try it there because when I was there, my friend that lived there, he's just like, you gotta try this. And I'm like, not for me.
I'd rather have a dog turd sandwich, buddy, but I'll do my best.
But the stall keeper, he's very commercialized, right? Like he's like, oh, American soldier, do you want some food? Like he's being friendly, he's being jovial, but it's also surface, right? Like he's not changing, he's just trying to make a sale. He's not moving relationships forward. And that's why I think the narrator just feels so alienated from people because he's treated as a commodity even. He's treated as just a way to make a quick buck. He's viewed as someone that's kind of just stuck in the past, honoring the past with his old Tokyo values and his kimono, as opposed to all the modernization and westernization that's coming in a sense.
Do you think he also feels that way because he's just kind of using this maybe situation to his advantage? He doesn't maybe genuinely care about her and he sees what he can get out of it.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, like to bring back to that idea of him being self-centered, it seems like it's very self-serving, this whole scenario that he's almost embedded himself in, not forcing himself, but very much encouraging, hey, let's go back and see your mom. And then he gets this bad news and he's like, all right, well, I'll get you some food to cheer you up. And, and he like stuffing the food in his pockets. And I don't know. He seems kind of like a creep. I'll just come out and say it. I'm not a big fan of him. Brilliantly written, but I think he's supposed to come off that way.
Well, for sure, right? Because when you remember his reasons, like it was like she's infatuated with him. It has nothing to do with her. Because she like adored him or took care of him, like that has nothing to do with her. She had alcohol. None of these are things about her of why to like her. There are things that are about him or serve him. So 100% he's only thinking about himself. But let's talk about that alcoholism, right? Sometimes people use alcohol, remember brilliantly, to feel more, right? Some use it to avoid and escape life. Some people, and I think this guy is that third case, I think he uses alcohol to alienate himself and continue to hide his real self, because when he does something stupid or something he doesn't like, you get to blame it on the alcohol. I was drunk. Like, that wasn't me, right?
Well, I don't know if he was bearing who he was, but he was definitely masking it or giving himself an excuse. So if anybody ever saw the true him or thought that was the true him, he always had that excuse to fall back upon and say, oh, yeah. And I think that's probably true. I mean, because he's definitely not using it for liquid courage, like we've discussed in other, stories about how alcohol is used and abused.
All right, so awful story, terrible writer. Let's go read his No Longer Human. I'll reread it so that way we can prepare. Please. If you didn't know, the sequel's coming out in March, so we gotta read the original, and then you can read the sequel, prequel, which is actually supposed to be comedy, and I think you've picked up. Comedy is he's got it, right? Like when he wants to be funny, he's there.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. So redo the schedule, buddy. Let's get on it.
All right, I'm on it. We're doing this and Ulysses next year. Just a couple of quick, easy reads, right?
Yes, sir. And let's throw in some Russian authors as well. Might as well.
Yeah. I mean, let's just go easy on ourselves next year. Take a nice light year. All right. Appreciate you guys spending some time with us. Obviously, I hope you know we're joking. I know sometimes some people aren't in on the sarcasm. We're being sarcastic. Brilliant writer, brilliant man. Can't wait to read more of him. Thank you for spending time today. Una out.
Merry Christmas.